Thank you all for coming here today. Appreciate it. And we're going to be introducing a bill that takes the current police grant program that the state has and has had for about the last decade and expands it in a couple of different ways. So, first of all, to get started, I want to thank Mayor Devine and Police Chief Paget for allowing us to be here today. We are in the 15th Assembly District, so we're in one of the best assembly districts in the state. But Chief Paget and the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department, Inspector Bailey is here today too. They were very instrumental in helping me craft the language that went into the grant program, because what we wanted to do was make sure that while we add increased funding, we're also increasing accountability, because we want to make sure that the programs that are being put in place, the dollars are being spent wisely. So we started on this a couple of years ago. Alderman Donovan had been a regular fixture up in the halls in the Capitol advocating for safety in Milwaukee. There's been a discussion about the amount of police officers that have been there. We know Milwaukee has had some crime issues in certain parts of the city. Quite frankly, people just don't feel safe. But we're here today because crime knows no bounds. And a lot of times we think that our crime problems are reserved to the larger urban areas. But here in West Dallas, we've been seeing an increase of violent crimes, robberies, and all around the state you have an increase of murders in Beloit. We have people dealing drugs out of a motel in Rothschild. We have over $1 million crime drug bust in a bar up in Wausau. So there is a crime problem prevalent around the state. What we want to do by expanding our police officer grant program is be able to take these extra funds and help our communities so that they can get in front of the crime problem. And this is really just a step one. This is not a silver bullet that's going to cure all the problems, because if we're going to really get crime under control, it's going to take an effort not only from our police officers on the street, but our district attorneys and our judges as well. So this is going to be a large effort. But this is like kind of the front attack, kind of like the surge, more or less. If we can beef up police presence in our neighborhoods, it makes our citizens feel safer, starts getting the bad guys off the street, and then we can start taking back control of some of our neighborhoods here. So the police grant program right now has $2 million in funding. We're proposing to increase that by an additional $14 million to bring the whole program up to $16 million. Because the state budget is tight and we're all concerned about spending money, it's important to note that we're putting this program out there without increasing additional spending on the part of the state. So when I introduced the bill, I put out a list of spending cuts that I thought could be implemented. They're discretionary spending, and we need to prioritize what we're doing. So some of these spending, we're putting safety behind walleye fishing and things like that. And so we're taking a look at how we're going to reappropriate some of these money, and it's really a matter of prioritizing our spending. We're also getting rid of the minimum requirement that a city, town, or village have at least a population of 25,000 people to partake in the grant program. Right now, we're opening it up to any size city, village, or town. And we're including for the first time counties so that sheriff's departments can take part in this as well. A lot of times when you're out in the more rural parts of the state, it's the sheriff's departments that are on the front lines and not necessarily a local municipal police department. So this is going to open that up as well. And then finally, the next change is, besides beat cops, we're opening this up so that municipalities and sheriff's departments can put special tactical units on there, for example, a drug enforcement unit. So if you're in an area where you don't have a lot of violent crime but you're experiencing a drug problem, you'll be able to use some of these funds for that as well. So as we move forward, I'm going to ask Mayor Devine to say a few words. We'll have Alderman Donovan, Mike Cravella from the Police Association will say a few words, and then we'll answer some questions for you. So, Mayor Devine. Thanks, Joe.
Good morning. I'll be very brief. Thank Representative Sanfelippo for looking into ways to expand public safety grants in our community. I've always said from day one that the city of West Dallas continues to redevelop, and we continue to kind of get out with the old and in with the new. I've said that we can redevelop as much as we want, but if people don't feel safe attending the areas we redevelop, it doesn't do a bit of good. So I think that this will be a good addition to the excellent job that our department already does. And that's about all I've got at this point.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. I'm fighting some allergies, so my comments will be brief because it's impacted my voice. I want you all to know it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I'm a smoker as well. Having said that, I want to thank Representative Sanfelippo. Joe gets it. He gets it. As he had mentioned, myself and Mike Crivello from the MPA have visited Madison on numerous occasions going back a couple years to try and help augment the ranks of the Milwaukee Police Department. The bottom line is this: there's a cancer in Milwaukee, and it is spreading because it has been unabated for years. That cancer is spreading to surrounding communities and across the state of Wisconsin. We need to take the appropriate steps to stop this cancer, to cut it out from our society. And one of the ways that that is accomplished is having the appropriate level of police presence, beat cops in our neighborhoods, making a difference in restoring order to the streets of Milwaukee, West Allis, Beloit, Racine, Wausau, and all of the other communities across Wisconsin that are challenged by crime. So again, I want to thank publicly Representative Sanfelippo. Again, I say he gets it. He realizes that this cancer is indeed spreading. And unless we take the appropriate steps, and a portion of the solution, not the entire, but a portion of the solution, is the appropriate level of policing. So thank you, Joe.
And thank you for taking interest in this issue. Police staffing is absolutely imperative that we take a look at this. On behalf of the Milwaukee Police Association and our 1,600 members, unfortunately, I find myself continuously advocating for more officers. The risk of understaffing the department should never be accepted. While this is an officer safety issue, it's much bigger. If we don't mitigate harm to our officers, they cannot adequately protect our communities. With that being said, I am grateful to Representative Sanfelippo, Alderman Donovan as well, and Sheriff Clark, and all others, civic leaders willing to state the truth, identify the issue, and work for a resolution. This opportunity, championed by Representative Sanfelippo, certainly represents a serious address to the current crime problem. We cannot succeed without proper staffing and utilization of those resources. Safer communities are absolutely obtainable. We simply need to be willing to make the commitment, the investment. When I served as an officer, it was rare to work without a partner. Now it is rare to work with one. Two officers afford a level of safety which enhance productivity, bolsters proactive community policing, and ultimately will improve response times. In Milwaukee, under the current administration, bureaus have been eliminated. The Detective Bureau and the Forensic Investigator Bureau has shrunk by 25%, and our entire department continues to be furloughed. The workload has not decreased. This simply means the police officers are redirected. They must pick up the work of the vacant positions. Ultimately, overworked and fatigued, officers are put in jeopardy working at a greater risk every day. This compromises our ability to protect our communities, delays response times, impacts the ability to solve crime, and fosters criminal growth, of which is evident in the escalating crime and homicide rate. Fully staffed and bolstered, a properly managed force would absolutely go a long way toward preventing and slowing crime. Thank you.
Okay, we can take some questions now.
Senator, you talked about priorities. I mean, this is a big jump, 2 million to 16 million. Why wouldn't $14 million also be well invested into a jobs program, into parks, into mental health programs? Aren't those all also things that would help reduce crime?
All of those things are important, but what you have to do is you have to start right in our neighborhoods. Crime doesn't have to affect a person to make that person not feel safe in their neighborhood. If you walk out into your alley to dump your garbage and you see graffiti on your garage or your neighbor's garage, you haven't suffered a violent crime, but you don't feel safe in your community. And if we're going to start rebuilding our communities and making people feel safe, we need to start right at the low level. Some disagree that it's important that the broken windows program more or less doesn't work, but I think we do see that it works. I mean, not only in New York on the national level, but right here in West Dallas, they started the Weed and Seed program, I think in 2008, and it has lowered property crimes to a good degree. And so what happens is when the community starts feeling safe, they're not afraid to go out their door as soon as it gets dusk. Those are important issues.
A lot also is being talked about building trust or restoring trust between police and a community. How does adding more police and potentially stoking more fear or antagonizing that kind of fear and pitting, communities against police, how do you think that helps trying to diffuse tensions?
I think that the people that feel that there's a mistrust in their community really are misguided in a way that, the police are there to protect us. Everybody wants to feel safe, and it doesn't matter whether you live in the suburbs or whether you live in the central city. People want to feel safe. But sometimes, authority figures, people want to naturally rebel against authority figures, but it's a matter of common sense and common courtesy and respect for your fellow man. So by having more police on the neighborhood, we have to start by nipping that crime right in the bud where it begins. Because if people do not feel safe in their neighborhoods, then you have a whole atmosphere against the city that is not going to be positive. And as the mayor mentioned, on an economic development level, on the job development level, we can spend all the money we want, but if people feel an area is not safe, they're going to avoid it, and that's not going to help.
If I could
Did you
just
want to say a few words, Bob?
Yeah, we're not looking at all to create a police department that's considered an occupying force in a neighborhood. This is to provide beat patrol officers, at least in the city of Milwaukee. And that's what this community, the city of Milwaukee, desperately needs. The connection between a good beat cop and the citizens that officer serves is unbelievable. I have seen it happen. The level of trust. Every study I have read, every research paper I have read indicates this. There is no better way to improve police-community relations than by implementing foot patrol and bicycle patrol officers in a neighborhood. The same officer, day in and day out, getting to know that neighborhood, the good and the bad. And I might add, in an era when we have incredibly low morale amongst our officers, at least in the city of Milwaukee, I am telling you again, according to every study, there is no better way to improve the morale of officers than assigning them to a beat. Thank you.
Just 15 seconds.
And if I may add, when we talk about relationships between the community and the police officers, so often, and I do appreciate the fact that you guys are here, the media portrays and they find the story to be in those that are antagonistic towards the police officers. I will tell you that our professional police officers in Milwaukee are received in every neighborhood of our city with open arms. I get calls every day, I get emails, and in fact, just yesterday I got a call from an individual who wants to have a pro-officer fundraiser because he said, there's many of us out here that support you. So we don't have that relationship that you might suggest. More officers just gives us more opportunities to foster and grow those type of relationships.
Yeah, on behalf of the sheriff's side of things, thank you so much to Representative Sanfelippo for extending for the first time this funding opportunity to the 72 sheriffs in this great state of Wisconsin. And in particular, allowing those sheriffs to use the funding to address the needs in their individual counties. Here in Milwaukee County, quite frankly, we have a problem with horribly brutal violence. Other counties, as you well know, are experiencing an explosion of heroin and the ills of heroin in their counties. And some counties would like to extend liaisons into tribal law enforcement. And what this funding does is allows the individual sheriffs to decide how to use the money in specialized operations to address whatever the problem is in their county. And I think that's very, very forward thinking. And can certainly go to establish the type of relationship you were talking about. But I certainly agree with MPA President Crivello that the belief that somehow increasing the presence of policing in a community is antagonistic or will hurt police neighborhood relations is it's a false economy and it doesn't exist. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, so I'll just send them out there and
Sure.
whoever wants to answer. The first is about, you said that violent crime and robberies are up in West Dallas. Do you have any numbers or a timeline as to what those crimes are, where they are, or, you know, should people be concerned? That's one question. The other is about the budget. You said that it would add up to 16 million and that 14 million already advocating to try to hold on to their money. There is, as you said, no money in the budget, and so it's really moving it around. The other is about the policing itself. Is there something missing now without this money? I know you say that it's rare for people to have partners and the crime issues, but should people be concerned right now that because these issues or these advancements haven't been put into place, that there are things they should be worried about because it doesn't exist?
I think that we always want to be aware of our surroundings before, you know, something terrible can happen. So going back to your first issue, you know, West Dallas is not riddled with crime at this point in time, but we have seen an increase. Since 2010, violent crimes have jumped 13%. Since 2013, aggravated assaults have increased 19%, and robberies have gone up by 7%. So you do see an increase, and I think that we see this corresponding to the amount of crime getting out of control in certain parts of Milwaukee. And again, as I mentioned, a lot of times in the suburban communities and rural areas, we feel that we're automatically safe, that the crime is more limited to large urban areas, but that's not the case. We can see that it's spreading. Even with the number of heroin cases processed by the state crime lab alone, it has nearly doubled in the last couple of years. And so I think it's important for us always to stay in focus and be alert of our surroundings. As far as the money, we have a $70 billion state budget. There's all sorts of little handouts in that budget that have happened throughout the years and things that are put in that end up remaining there for years and years and years, even they may no longer be needed. You know, and it's a matter of reprioritizing our spending. To the people who think breeding walleye is very important for the northern tourism in our state, it is. But is that more important than protecting the, clamping down on the heroin problem that's going out in Wausau? I mean, we see it time and time again around the state. So this isn't, the programs that we put forth and recommended for cutting is not a commentary necessarily on those specific programs, but when you have to make tough choices, you have to make tough choices, and we have to start weighing all those things out. Priority should be placed on crime and controlling it and bringing perpetrators to justice. And, you know, I'm ready just to stand up to some of these special interests and say, you know, time is that we reprioritize the money.
You talk about the walleye, but you also identify tobacco use control, joint tourism marketing, and the state parole commission. The tourism marketing is something that's gonna bring money here.
Correct.
And, you know, contribute to the bottom line. The tobacco use control and the state parole commission, can they afford to have their budgets, you know?
So the State Parole Commission, a little pot of money that a special interest group had gotten put into the budget a few years ago, and it remains there. So that's where that issue is coming from. As far as the tobacco prevention, everybody knows that smoking is not good for you. In fact, our smoker rate has gone down. So what we're taking a look at is it important for us to continue to talk to people about smoking in the problems with it when everybody knows that it's already not good for you. So they've actually done a good job. But you know, Ronald Reagan said the nearest thing to eternity on earth is a government program. And we have to look at some of these programs, and do we still need to keep spending the same amount of money on these programs today that we spent a decade ago when the problem really was there in the first place? We've drastically lowered smoking, and so now, you know, we need to protect these kids from being shot and killed in their neighborhoods and then worry about them not smoking. Doesn't matter if they're gonna smoke or not if they're killed by the time they're 14. Anybody else, anything to say on any of those three questions? Any other questions?
Well, I still believe it is incumbent on the city to man the current authorized strength. They need to bring us up to where we belong. The way I look at this is an outstanding opportunity, and that's why I say I'm thankful to Representative Sanfelippo to bolster the opportunities that we have to get ahead of this escalating crime and homicide rate. We do need more bodies, there is no doubt.
Let me say this, the challenges impacting Milwaukee are many and numerous. Public safety is one of those huge challenges. And I have believed for years that it is important for the city to begin the process of digging itself out of the huge hole that we've gotten ourselves in. It is important to foster a partnership with the state of Wisconsin in dealing with these challenges. So I'm pleased, and that's what the effort was. Again, beginning that partnership, while there may be some elected officials who choose to point fingers and blame the legislature and the state government, I believe it's important to work with them. And I think now we're beginning to see some of the fruits of that partnership.
All right, I think that's it. All right, thank you very much for coming, appreciate it. Here, Dan, thank you.
Now the hard work.
Now we gotta get there.
Joe, thanks again.
Living is good, you bring that. That's great. Yeah, we'll go get it. Yeah, sure. Thank you, fellas. Thank you.